Hello, everybody. Today we will be working on Lesson 7. That is the last lesson in the first booklet of this course. Now, this tends to be the trickiest lesson, so make sure that you're taking your time and asking questions if you're confused. Now, you will only need 2 papers for this lesson. That's the lesson itself and the homework that comes immediately after. Now, many years ago, we stopped using pennies. At some point, it just cost more money to make the pennies than they were worth themselves. But the problem that came when we stopped using pennies is that sometimes a product will cost a specific amount of money where you would have to use pennies to buy it. For example, this number right here, $1.33, you can't make that exact amount of change unless you use 3 pennies. So what we started doing was we started rounding to the nearest nickel. Now this rounding works differently than all of the rounding we've done so far. So please don't get confused with how we used to do rounding and how we're doing rounding in this lesson. The key words that you're looking for in a question is round to the nearest nickel. When you see to the nearest nickel, you're using the strategies from this lesson specifically. The best way to describe how to do this is by using a number line. You don't have to write anything down yet, but please just follow along with my diagram here. Here, I have written down all of our options between 0 cents and 10 cents. Now, the thing about 0 cents, as well as 5 cents and 10 cents, is that they are all acceptable numbers. These are good because I can make 0 cents, 5 cents, and 10 cents without using any pennies. 0 cents is just no money, 5 cents is 1 nickel, and 10 cents is 2 nickels or a dime. However, everything that's in between is bad money. 2 cents, 1 cent, 3 cents, and 4 cents, I need to use that many pennies to make them. Even 6 cents, sure, I could use a dime, but I would still need, not a dime, I'm sorry. 6 cents, still I could use a nickel, but I would need a penny on top of that nickel in order to make 6 cents. So it's not allowed because I don't want to use pennies anymore. So everything that I have highlighted in red is no good. We don't want any of our costs of product to end in 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So instead, we round them in the following way. If however much money you owe ends in a 1 or a 2, we round to 0. If it ends in a 3 or a 4, we round up to 5. If it ends in a 6 or a 7, we round down to 5. And if it ends in an 8 or a 9, we round up to 10. This might look a little bit confusing right now, but it will be easier with practice and example. Below, I've asked you, round $8.72 to the nearest nickel. Again, you see nearest nickel and you think I'm using the strategies from this diagram. Now, when I ask you to round to the nearest nickel, you're always going to use the hundredths, the final cents in your monetary value. This too needs to change. Because as it is now, I would need 2 pennies to make $8.72. So how is this 2 going to change? Well, because it's a 2, it's going to round down to 0. all the way down to 0. Well, that wants to stay there. And what that is going to look like is $8.70, right? That 2 goes down the line all the way to 0. So if you want, take a picture of this diagram or write it down somewhere, because maybe it'll be useful to have it with you when you're writing the assessment. Now, let's fill in this note. Whoops. Let's fill in this note and hopefully get some more practice. Recall that nickels are worth 5 cents. So rounding to the nearest nickel means that it could end in 0 cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, etc. Example 1 is to round $1.33 to the nearest nickel. Step 1, look at the number in the hundredths place value. The hundredths place value always going to be that last digit, the second one. I don't like that this ends in a 3. I would need 3 pennies in order to make this work. So step 2, if the number is a 3 or a 4, you round up to 5. If the number is a 1 or a 2, you round down to 0. Right? That's the same as this diagram. My number is a 3. So we are going to round up to 5. So, because it's a 3, we are going to round up. That 3 turns into a 5, so this is $1.35. You no longer need pennies to pay for it. Example 2. Round $20.66 to the nearest nickel. Again, we're going to look at the number in the hundredths place value. This time, that last number is a 6. Now, if that number is an 8 or a 9, you round up to 0. If that number is a 6 or a 7, you round down to 5. So, that's again the same as this diagram. If we're a 6 or a 7, we go down to 5. If we're a 9 or a 10, I like to think that if we're an 8 or a 9, I like to think that we go up to 10. Our number is a 6, so we are going to round down to 5. So, our answer is going to be $20.65. Now, take a minute, pause this video and try these examples on your own, and then come back and make sure that they're correct. The first question is to round $4.61 to the nearest nickel. Keyword, again, to the nearest nickel. That means, that is not what I had intended to highlight. Nearest nickel. That means that we're using this diagram right here. Now, our number is $4.61. We focus in on that last digit, the hundredths, that 1. We go to our diagram. Here's our 1. We go to our diagram. Here is our 1. So we are going to round down to 0. That makes our final amount $4.60. The next question, round $30.45 to the nearest nickel. This ends in a 5. We go to our diagram. We take a look. Well, 5 is already an acceptable number. That's green. We're good to go. We don't need to change that. So I don't change that. I just leave it as $30.45. Now, we want to round $0.18 to the nearest nickel. So I focus in on that 8. I go to my diagram. Well, if I'm an 8, then what I need to do is I need to round up to 10. Now pay close attention to this. When I round up to 10, that 8 is going to turn into a 0, and the 1 is going to be added on to the number before. So if I round the 8 to a 10, this actually becomes 20 cents. I'm rounding 18 up to 20. So when you round up to 10, when your number ends in an 8 or a 9, you need to remember to take the digit before and increase it by 1. Final question, $3.57. We take a look at this 7. Here it is on our chart. Now, when we have a 7, we are going to round down to 5. Right? So, what's that going to look like? All we need to do is turn that 7 into a 5, $3.55. Make sure to take time, practice the homework, and double check with your teacher that it is correct, because this does take some time to be correct about. Make sure you ask questions, and have a good one.